the first snowfall of the year arrived on December 1st. As if someone in the sky had a very well-organized calendar and zero social life. Claudia Lopez was placing the last tray of gingerbread cookies in the display window of Sugar Project when the first snowflakes began to stick to the glass. The entire town of Holleridge looked like a snow globe shaken by an overexcited child. Lights tangled around the lampposts, red wreaths on every door, and people wearing ridiculous hats that are only acceptable in December or during a midlife crisis. Relax, Claudia, you're 39, you own a bakery, and every one of your gray hairs is paid for with dignity. This isn't a crisis, it's vital decoration. The smell inside the shop was a calculated blend of cinnamon, butter, and hot chocolate. Not accidental. If she was going to lift an entire town powered by carbohydrates, she'd better do it right. Her curvy hips were living proof that she tested her own products with scientific rigor. Frida, her blue Siberian cat and self-proclaimed quality inspector, slept curled up in an empty cardboard box, right on top of the sweet advent calendar stickers. Every time someone got too close, she opened one eye, judged them silently like a misunderstood artist, and went back to sleep, deeply offended by the concept of Monday. Today, the pre-orders start. Frida, Claudia murmured as she adjusted the sign on the door for the third time. 24 days. 24 surprise boxes, 24 chances for the town to sweeten up with me.
It's the Christmas spirit.
The sweet advent calendar was her star invention of the year. 24 numbered little boxes, one for each day until Christmas, filled with mini rolls, cookies, tiny chocolates, and a few cheesy positive notes written by herself, the queen of motivational sarcasm. After the divorce, Claudia Lopez had made a very clear mental list of things she did not need. 1. A partner asking, "Are you really going to eat that?" while staring at her plate. 2. Unsolicited opinions about her body. 3. Drama. Instead, she had chosen to specialize in 1. Butter. 2. Icing. 3. Making sure people left her bakery feeling a little better than when they walked in. And if, in the process, she healed herself with sugar and healthy boundaries, even better. That very morning, her Sagittarius horoscope on a suspicious phone app had declared, "Today a new romantic cycle begins." "Keep your eyes and heart open," Claudia had snorted, closed the app, and decided that the only cycle she intended to open for now was the evens. Sure, anonymous astrologer. A new romantic cycle during peak holiday season. Anything else? Maybe a triathlon? The doorbell rang with its sharp little chime. Claudia didn't look up at first. She already knew who it was. 8 in the morning. Time for Mildred Jenkins, 72 years old and with lips redder than any Christmas decoration in town. "Claudia, darling," she said, wrapped in a purple coat that refused to coordinate with anything. "Tell me you're making those pecan tartlets again this year, the ones that made me believe in love again." Claudia smiled, adjusting her green Christmas apron. "Good morning, Mildred. Those tartlets should come with an emotional content warning. And yes, you'll get your tartlets. But today, the Advent calendar pre-orders begin." She pointed at the 3 sample boxes, carefully arranged on a table, small, white, with red bows and gold hand-painted numbers. She'd spent half of November with acrylic paint on her fingers. And yes, she could have had them printed, but Christmas charm doesn't get outsourced. "I saw your sign at the church," Mildred said, leaning in to examine them. 24 days of sweetness before Christmas. Very nice. Holleridge's official happiness dealer. Or of diabetes, Claudia muttered. "But that sounded worse on the flyer." Mildred burst out laughing. "Give me one for my granddaughter and one for me. And don't be shy with the chocolate. The spiciest thing I have in my life right now is 80% cacao." As she filled out the form, Claudia felt that warm, small pride bloom in her chest. Sugar Project full even on a Monday morning. The Christmas tree lit up beside the counter, the line beginning to form. This place was hers, her recipes. Her decisions, her life. And not a single man telling her she bakes too much. Thank you very much. By mid-morning she had already sold 8 calendars. The doorbell wouldn't stop ringing. The barista Tom, a college student and lover of off-season Christmas carols, had a holiday playlist on loop. And Claudia alternated between helping customers, chatting, and making sure Frida didn't eat the ribbons or claim the most expensive sample box as her personal throne. That was when she saw it. Not him, The envelope. It was sitting on top of the register, where people left coin tips, perfectly placed as if someone had used a ruler and set square. She didn't remember it being there a second ago. Or 5 minutes ago. She would have noticed it. She was a baker, not a professional scatterbrain. "Tom," she called out while helping a couple having a serious argument about whether cinnamon in a cappuccino was too festive. "Did you leave this here?" Tom peeked out from behind the espresso machine.
He had foam on his nose, again? What thing?
"The white envelope?" He shook his head. "No, but maybe it's from a secret admirer," he winked. "It's peak season for improbable romance, right?" "Great, not even a cookie decorated with Christmas trees yet, and we're already starting with the love theme." Nonsense. When there was finally a tiny break, if 3 people and a box of uniced donuts could be called a break, Claudia picked up the envelope. It was plain white, unadorned, only her name written in beautiful handwriting, the kind made for important letters and notes that change lives. Claudia. Nothing else. She felt a silly flutter in her stomach. "If this is a bill, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed." She carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet folded in thirds, the same elegant handwriting. "Day. One of the sweet advent calendar. I propose a different one. 24 days for you to receive some of the magic you give to others. If you accept the deal, look under sample box number 1. Signed, someone who thinks you deserve more surprises." Claudia swallowed. "What the?" she whispered. She looked around as if the mysterious author were about to stand up from some table, announce himself with a megaphone, and hand her a bouquet of cookies. Sugar Project looked the same as always. A mother trying to convince her son that the Christmas tree cookie tastes the same as the reindeer one, Tom battling milk foam, Mildred in the corner sharing gossip. Frida, of course, watched her with that feline face that said, "Humans are a social experiment." "Under sample box number 1, Claudia repeated quietly. The Christmas tree blinked next to her as she crouched down. Box number 1 was the one with the widest red bow, placed in the middle of the rest like a little white queen. She lifted it carefully. Underneath was a smaller red box with the number 1 painted in gold. It wasn't one of hers, not her paint. Not her bow. Okay, universe, this is officially weird. And a little exciting, but mostly weird. She opened it. Inside was a mini mint brownie covered in dark chocolate, with bits of crushed candy on top. It smelled like "eat me," and "don't complain later when your jeans don't fit, Claudia." There was also a tiny note folded under the brownie. Rule number 1 of this calendar. You have to eat whatever's inside. Rule number 2. You have to keep this little box. Tomorrow you'll need number 2. Claudia? Mildred's voice pulled her out of her bubble. Are you all right, sweetheart? You have the same face I get when the pastor sings off-key carols. Claudia closed the little box. Her heart halfway between "what a lovely gesture" and "hello, this could totally be the start of a true crime podcast." "All good," she said with a small smile. "Just Christmas things." She didn't say anything else. Not to Mildred, not to Tom, not to Frida, who insisted on sticking her paw inside the box as if she wanted to sign the work. She stored box number 1 on the back shelf where she kept her personal things. Her favorite mug, her planner, her Christmas pencil with a ridiculous reindeer on top. She decided that if this was a prank, at least it came with chocolate. And if it wasn't, well. By mid-afternoon, when the snowfall already covered Main Street and the garland lights reflected on the wet pavement, the door chimed again. Claudia looked up out of habit, not expecting anything different from the usual. And then she saw him walk in. He was tall, with dark brown hair tousled by the wind, a navy blue jacket with melted snow on the shoulders, and a gray scarf that looked far too thin for a Hollyridge winter. He had a strong jawline, 1 or 2 days stubble, and clear blue eyes that scanned the shop with curiosity before settling on her. He smiled, a warm, slow smile that had nothing to do with cheap bar flirting. It was more as if he already knew her. Claudia's heart gave a small jump, pure reflex. Great. Universe, are you seriously sending me a cocky 20-something heartthrob in the middle of peak work season? Very timely. Hi, he said, approaching the counter. Is this the place with the famous sweet advent calendar? He pointed at the sign with a small gesture, and, as he did, Claudia saw something else. On his wrist, just below the sleeve of his jacket, a tiny smudge of gold paint. Exactly the same shade as the number 1 on the mysterious red box. And for the first time in a long while, she had the very clear feeling that this December wasn't going to be just any December. The boy with the gray scarf stayed for a second in the doorway, shaking the snow from his hair with his free hand. The icy wind slipped in behind him, bringing a burst of white, noisy air that contrasted with the warm sweetness inside Sugar Project. He closed the door carefully, almost reverently, as if he already understood that this was no ordinary door but the entrance to sacred territory made of butter and powdered sugar. Claudia pretended to focus on wiping imaginary crumbs off the counter. Yes, sure, perfectly normal. Just another customer. Another customer with commercial blue eyes and gold paint on his wrist. But a customer all the same, for a fraction of a second. She remembered that absurd horoscope from that morning. Today, a new romantic cycle begins. Relax, anonymous astrologer. This is not a romantic cycle. This is a cold front with eyes. Welcome to Sugar Project, she said in her functional baker voice, not with the nervous one dancing inside her. What can I get you? He stepped further in, looking around as if he were walking through a museum. His eyes paused on the tree, the garlands, the trays of decorated cookies, and finally on her. I think the real question is, he smiled, leaning his elbows on the counter. What can't you get here? It smells like Christmas decided to move into this place and pay rent in baked goods. Tom, from behind the espresso machine, muttered a muffled amen under the steam. Mildred, at her usual table, discreetly looked up from her phone. Clearly, the new boy had an audience. Claudia felt the flush rise up her neck. We've got a bit of everything, she replied, trying to sound casual. Cookies, brownies, tartlets, buns. And the famous sweet advent calendar, from what I've heard. She pointed at the sign with a small tilt of her head. He followed the gesture and laughed. So it's true. It wasn't just a town myth. That depends, Claudia said, a little more relaxed. If you were expecting fireworks and angel choirs, you'll be disappointed. If you're more into sugar and surprise boxes, it might be for you. He lifted his hands in mock surrender. I'm into surprise boxes and sugar. And well-made projects. His eyes returned to her warm.
I'm Theo, by the way. For a second, Claudia blanked out. Theo. Perfect.
Short name, easy to remember, impossible to get out of your head. Thanks, universe. Claudia, she answered, wiping her hands on her apron even though they were clean. Claudia Lopez. He repeated her name under his breath, as if testing the sound. Claudia. It fits the place. Don't know why, but it does. Mildred nearly choked on her coffee from how hard she was eavesdropping. Frida decided it was the perfect moment to rise, stretch as if waking from a transcendent dream, and jump onto the counter with the elegance of a theater diva. She positioned herself exactly between Theo and the cookie trays, stared at him, and sniffed the air. Her blue Siberian fur looked like a soft cloud outlined against the glow of Christmas lights. That's Frida, Claudia explained. If she approves of you, you can stay. If not, well, it's her shop, I just pay the bills. Theo bowed his head toward the cat. An honor, Frida. He offered his hand for her to smell. Frida inspected it with precision before lightly brushing against his fingers. Claudia raised an eyebrow. Great, the new guy isn't just handsome, he knows how to handle cats. Literally and probably figuratively. Danger level, maximum Christmas alert. Looks like she approves, Claudia admitted. She doesn't give in that easily. I must smell like paint and cold coffee, he joked. Artists usually appreciate that. Claudia's gaze dropped automatically to his wrist. The little smear of gold paint was still there, peeking out from under his sleeve. Painter, she asked, feigning neutrality. Sort of, Theo shrugged. Murals, posters, store windows, seasonal decorations. I'm helping with the town's Christmas events this year. The council decided Holleridge needed a young and creative touch. He made air quotes. Translation: someone willing to spend hours outside hanging lights for very little money. Claudia smiled, amused. And you accepted. I just moved here, he said. His eyes brightened slightly. It was either that or stay alone in a rented room with a noisy radiator and reheated food. I'd rather freeze hanging lights if I can come to a place like this afterward to get feeling back in my fingers. There was something in his tone, a mix of humor and sincerity that nudged a soft corner of Claudia. I just moved here, sounded like heartbreak, change, starting over in a town where everyone knows everyone else's name and everyone else's drama. Welcome to the club of people running from something. Theo, the difference is you have a cool scarf, and I'm wearing an apron with reindeer on it. Then you need coffee, she said, slipping into professional mode. And sugar. A lot. As she made a latte with extra foam and pulled out a tray of freshly baked cinnamon rolls, Tom drifted closer, leaning on the sidebar. Do I write down the latte as the new scarf guy? He whispered. Write it as Theo, she replied. And, as a paying customer, in case you were wondering, Tom threw a mischievous smile Theo's way. Just so you know, if you keep coming, you'll get your own nickname. No one escapes it here. I'll keep that in mind, Theo answered, amused. Claudia placed the coffee in front of him, along with a big cinnamon roll, glazed and still warm. On the house, this time, she said. Consider it our welcome protocol for newcomers to Hollyridge. Theo looked genuinely surprised. That's dangerous, you know. If you treat people like this, they'll never want to leave town. That's the idea, Claudia replied. The more captive customers, the better. He tore off a piece of the roll, the glaze stretching like a tiny shining ribbon. If you knew how badly I needed this today,
he murmured, taking a bite. He closed his eyes for a moment.
Okay, this is officially the best cinnamon roll I've ever had. Claudia felt a warm, silly pride swell in her chest. Say it louder in case someone's taking notes for our marketing campaign, she joked. Free marketing campaign for Sugar Project, sponsored by the new guy in town. Theo raised the roll. Do you accept? I accept, she said. Their eyes held for a second longer than what was strictly professional. Claudia's heart made that reckless little jump again. Easy there, heart. We do not have time for this. We have orders, calendars, bills. And he smells like life changes and blue-eyed trouble. So... Theo set the roll down and pointed at the sample boxes. Tell me more about this famous calendar. I'm seeing a lot of serious faces staring at it like it's a winning lottery ticket. Mildred cleared her throat dramatically. Because IT is, she announced, shameless. Claudia has turned the countdown to Christmas into an emotional, extreme sport. Claudia rolled her eyes, but smiled. It's just a box with surprise sweets. One little thing each day until the 24th, she shrugged. Sometimes a quote, sometimes a recipe, sometimes something. Theo tilted his head. Sometimes something sounds intriguing. It's part of the mystery. Claudia crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. The town needs something nice in December. Something that isn't just the lottery or the heating bill. He looked at her with a calm intensity that almost unbalanced her. And you give them that. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I make doughs and icings, she corrected, uncomfortable with the spotlight. The rest just happens. Theo nodded but didn't look away. Then give me one. One more cinnamon roll, she asked, though she knew perfectly well what he meant.
A calendar, he said. I want one. Claudia blinked. One?
I thought you'd say it was for a nephew or a girlfriend or... It slipped out. Great. Now she sounded like a nosy person who needed to know his relationship status before deciding how many cinnamon roll samples to give him. Theo smiled, amused, as if he'd heard all of those thoughts. I don't have nephews. Or a girlfriend. Or a dog. He glanced at Frida. Yet, Frida meowed as if seriously considering adopting a new human. The calendar is for me, he continued. It's my first December here. I want... He paused, searching for the words. A reason to wake up each day that isn't just, you have to hang lights and try not to freeze to death. Claudia felt a soft, familiar tightness in her chest. She understood that feeling too well. All right, she said, picking up the reservation pad. One for Theo. Mitchell, he added. Theo Mitchell. In case you need the last name to put me on the list of problematic customers. For Theo Mitchell, Claudia repeated as she wrote. The phrase problematic customers hung briefly in the air. She thought of the white envelope, the red box, the mini mint brownie, the smear of gold paint on his wrist. Problematic? Well, maybe a very different category of problem than the one she'd sworn off. You can pick it up tomorrow afternoon, she said, meeting his gaze. Your box will be ready. Theo tapped the counter lightly with his knuckles, as if sealing a deal. Perfect. Tomorrow, then. He finished his coffee, saved the last bite of cinnamon roll as if it were treasure, and headed toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back to her. By the way, Claudia, yes? I'm glad places like this exist. And people like you making sure not everyone hates December. He winked light, not invasive, and stepped into the cold, disappearing into the snow still falling over Hollyridge. Claudia stood there for a few seconds, staring at the closed door, pen still in her hand, heart doing unauthorized somersaults. Great, now December has blue eyes, a last name, and a reserved calendar. Wonderful parallel universes, wonderful. Frida jumped onto the stool beside her, gently digging her claws into the apron. Don't you dare judge me, Claudia muttered, stroking her head. He's just a customer, just a calendar, just day one, and a very clear, very new feeling that this Advent game was about to get extremely complicated. December 2nd dawned even whiter than the day before. As if Hollyridge had ordered a dramatic Christmas filter and the sky had said, "Hold my hot chocolate." Claudia had been awake since 5:30. Not for romantic reasons, but because December doesn't bake itself. Even so, before going down to Sugar Project, she did something she had promised herself not to turn into a habit. She carefully, almost ridiculously, opened the dark red box numbered 2. She had it hidden on the hallway shelf, behind a couple of baking books and a half-burned cinnamon candle. Box number 1 rested beside it, empty but intact, as if they were part of a small secret collection. Number 2 was dark green, with the number painted in gold, the same confident stroke. Inside, she found a butter cookie shaped like a crescent moon, with a soft glaze that smelled of vanilla and lemon. Underneath, like the day before, there was a folded note. Day 2. Sometimes you're the one who has to let yourself be taken care of a little. You don't have to do everything alone. Claudia snorted, half annoyed, half moved. Perfect. As well as anonymous baker. Now he's an emotional coach. She popped the cookie into her mouth almost out of pure rebellion and went downstairs to open the bakery. The day was intense, with orders from local businesses, desperate mothers looking for something cute for the school performance, and Mildred organizing from her table what seemed to be a boycott against the church's punch. By the time evening fell, the town had turned pastel orange and pink behind the curtain of snow. The Christmas lights shining cast a soft glow across Sugar Project's windows. After Tom left for class and Mildred went off to keep an eye on the pastor, Claudia stayed alone inside for a while. She stood at the shop window, running a cloth along the edges of the glass. Outside, the icy air puffed clouds from every passerby's breath. Inside, the smell of sugar and coffee mingled with the distant sound of a carol. Frida, being a proper supervisor, had installed herself on one of the tables by the window, curled up on a red-checked tablecloth. Claudia had just been thinking about pulling down the shutter when the bell over the door rang again. "Sorry, we're almost," she began, turning around and stopped. "Oh!" Theo was in the doorway, again with the gray scarf, hair tousled by the wind, and that same smile that seemed to bring its own kind of light. He carried a large folder under his arm, its edges a little bent from the snow. "I promise I'm not here to demand more free buns," he said, lifting his free hand. "Just to pick up my famous calendar. And to bring this," he raised the folder an inch, as if it were a shared secret. Claudia felt that little treacherous jump in her stomach that was starting to become worryingly common. "Easy, Sagittarius, he's just a customer." A customer with a mysterious folder, and blue eyes and a warm smile. "But a customer. You're right on time," she replied, slipping back into baker mode. "I was about to close. Your calendar's ready." She went behind the counter, opened the shelf where she kept pre-orders, and pulled out a white box with a green ribbon and a label that read, "Theo Mitchell," in neat letters. Theo looked at it with an almost emotional expression. "You have no idea how much I needed to have something like this in my hands this year," he said, accepting the box carefully. "My inner child would be proud." "Your inner child has good taste then," Claudia replied. Frida jumped down with a demanding meow, walked up to Theo, and sniffed the box as if she wanted to personally inspect the merchandise. "Don't worry, Frida," he said. "I promise to share some imaginary crumbs with you." Claudia smiled, but her attention drifted to the folder still tucked under his other arm. "And that?" she asked, nodding toward it. "You coming to sue Sugar Project because yesterday's bun was too good?" Theo laughed. Worse, I came to suggest something. Do you have 5 minutes, or does your busy Christmas woman schedule not allow it? Claudia pretended to think about it. If your proposal involves painting the facade neon, the answer is no. Not that radical, he joked. Can I? He gestured toward the storefront window. I've been working on some sketches for the main businesses in town, he explained. Personalized Christmas decorations. And, well, I thought of this place. He opened the folder on a nearby table, gently nudging Frida aside. From inside, he pulled out a thick sheet with an ink and watercolor illustration. Sugar Project's front window scene from outside, framed with fir branches and small golden sparkles. On the glass, hand-lettered words read, "December tastes better here." Below, small details, a steaming mug, a star-shaped cookie. What looked like a stylized version of Frida wearing a Santa hat. Claudia stayed quiet for a few seconds. There was something deeply tender about the design. It wasn't just pretty. It captured exactly the feeling she tried to create every morning when she turned on the lights and set out the trays. "Theo," she began, feeling a strange warmth behind her eyes. "It's beautiful." He hunched his shoulders a little, blushing. "I can paint it on the glass if you want," he said. "I'd do it for free, well, in exchange for a coffee now and then. It'll look good on my portfolio. And the town loves taking pictures of pretty things." Claudia crossed her arms, though her smile ruined any attempt at distance. "And you're sure you want to work for a boss as demanding as Frida?" As if she'd understood, Frida hopped onto the chair beside them and fixed her gaze on the sketch. "I think we can come to an agreement," Theo said. "What do you say?" Claudia looked again at the drawing, then at the glass, then at him. It had snowed so much that the street outside looked like a movie set. For a moment, the idea of that painted window, people stopping to look, Sugar Project glowing even more in December, seemed irresistible. And then there was the fact that Theo would be spending more time there. But that was a technical detail her horoscope didn't need to know. "I say yes," she answered at last. "But the coffee now and then becomes coffee every day you come paint. I refuse to be stingy with the artist's caffeine." "Deal," he smiled. While Theo pulled out special markers and glass paint, Claudia fetched 2 cups of coffee. She set one for him and one for herself by the window and stayed to watch as he drew the first lines on the glass. There was a calm focus in his movements, a gentle precision that relaxed her. "Don't look at me like that, you're making me nervous," he said suddenly, still not taking his eyes off the glass. "I'm supervising quality," she replied. "This is a very serious assessment." He smiled. "Do you also assess people's horoscopes, or just their coffee?" Claudia blinked. "What?" Theo nodded toward her phone, resting beside her cup. On the dark screen, the notification from the horoscope app she'd checked that morning and forgotten to close was still visible. "Sagittarius, right?" he said. "I saw the little icon." Claudia felt the blush rising again. "Perfect. Now he's also a witness to my trashy horoscope addiction." "Wonderful. Scientific research," she replied seriously. "I need to know what cosmic excuse I'm going to use when I burn a batch of cookies." Theo chuckled softly. "My horoscope was dramatic today, too." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" "I didn't have you down as the astrology type." "I'm not," he admitted. "But my sister installed the app on my phone and threatened to emotionally disown me if I didn't check it once in a while." Claudia leaned back in her chair, interested in spite of herself. "All right, Mitchell. Confess, what's your sign?" Theo hesitated for a second, as if he knew he was about to hand her ammunition for life. "Pisces!" Claudia closed her eyes dramatically. "Perfect! A Sagittarius and a Pisces. The universe has decided to write fanfiction about me. Is that good or bad?" he asked, amused, still painting a little garland in the corner of the glass. "Depends on the app," she said. "Half of them say it's a match of deep water and expansive fire, and the other half say it's emotional drama on legs." "Claudia, please stop sounding like you've analyzed this before. Not with him. Don't give him ideas. And what did your horoscope say today?" Theo asked, turning slightly toward her. Claudia hesitated. She could give him the watered-down version, or she could tell the truth. And for some reason, sitting there at that table with hot coffee in her hands, watching the sky darken behind the freshly painted glass, she chose the truth. That a new romantic cycle is beginning, she admitted. And that I should keep my eyes and my heart open. Theo laughed, but not at her, more like with her. Wow, mine said something similar, but in the depressing edition. He set the marker down on the table and leaned against the edge of the chair opposite her, cup in hand. It's a good moment to start building a home in places you never thought you'd stay, he recited. And then an even cornier line about letting yourself trust new people. Claudia looked at him, surprised. That's pretty specific. I know, he shrugged. I laughed. And then I caught myself thinking about it all day like an idiot. Claudia recognized that tone. The sound of someone who didn't want to open up completely, but was halfway there. And have you been thinking about it because you just moved? She asked gently, but with a smile, or because the noisy radiator has you on the verge of a mental breakdown? Theo toyed with the cup handle. A bit of everything, he admitted. I used to live in the city. Worked as a graphic designer in an agency. Had a girlfriend, an expensive rental, and a plant that almost died every 2 weeks. Claudia listened quietly. The agency started cutting people, he continued. My creative but sensitive profile was one of the first out the door. And my girlfriend told me more or less that same week that the murals and art thing was a hobby, not a life project. Claudia frowned. Charming! Theo smiled without humor. I never seen so clearly that I wasn't where I was supposed to be. And right then my sister sent me a photo of a notice, looking for an artist to decorate Hollyridge for Christmas. Accommodation included for 1 month, possible extension. And you jumped, Claudia finished. And I jumped, he echoed. A month here. Lights, snow, small town, people who already have their stories in place. I thought, staying here can't be worse than staying where I was. He fell silent for a moment, watching the slower snow outside as if it were listening too. And here I am, he added, lowering his gaze to the drawing on the glass. Painting shop windows and eating the best cinnamon roll of my life. Doesn't sound that bad. Claudia felt a strange tightness in her throat. All right, Sagittarius. Let me confirm this for you. This is a new cycle for him too. And much more real than the one in your app. Your ex is an idiot, she said calmly. In case you needed a professional assessment, Theo burst into genuine laughter. I'll make a note. Do you also offer ex evaluation services along with advent calendars? Only for select customers, she replied. But yes, he looked at her for a moment, serious again. And you? He asked. What's a Sagittarius with a perfect bakery, diva cat, and famous calendar doing in a town like this? Claudia thought about making up a light version of the story. But once more she found herself choosing to tell something real. I'm here because one day I got tired of someone commenting on whether I was too much, she answered. Too hardworking, too sensitive, too straightforward too. She gestured to her body, to everything. Theo said nothing. He just listened. We sold the house. I walked away with less than I deserved and more than I wanted to remember, Claudia went on. And one day, driving with no clear plan, I passed through this town. The shop was empty, the snow was falling just like today, and I thought, if I'm going to reinvent myself, let it be with the smell of cinnamon. She smiled, small but real. And here I am. Noisy radiator included. I've got one too. Theo set his cup down slowly. Your horoscope is understated, he said at last. It didn't mention you'd already started that cycle a while ago. A comfortable silence fell, full of unsaid but understood things. Frida stretched and hopped into Claudia's lap as if sealing the moment. So, Claudia broke the silence in a lighter tone. Sagittarius and Pisces working together on a Christmas shop window. What does your compatibility app say about that, Mitchell? That we should avoid impulsive decisions and mixing emotions with sugar, he shot back. Too late, Claudia said, looking at the drawing on the glass. The lettering almost finished now. I've already mixed sugar with everything. Their eyes met for a long second. It wasn't a big movie moment, but it was one of those when the air feels different, denser, more possible, easy, heart. We're just talking about horoscopes, and exes and new beginnings, and Christmas windows. Nothing dangerous. Absolutely nothing. Theo cleared his throat and turned back to the glass. I'm going to finish the stars in this corner and let you close up in peace, he said. But thanks for the coffee. and for sharing your version of emotional apocalypse. You're welcome, Claudia replied. Thanks for painting my window, and for... She paused, choosing her words, for making sure December isn't just work. Deal, he said, smiling without looking at her. I'll handle the pretty drawings. You handle the smells like home. As the last gold lines appeared on the window, Claudia thought of box number 2 and the note that said she didn't have to do everything alone. She glanced at Theo, focused, and wondered whether the mysterious author of the calendar knew that, deep down, horoscopes sometimes got the day wrong, but nailed the person. And for the first time, the idea of that new romantic cycle stopped sounding like a bad app joke and started sounding dangerously like a real possibility. December 3rd dawned with less meteorological drama and more snow hangover. Rooftops weighed down, trees dripping icy droplets, and kids testing the structural resistance of every snow pile with well-aimed kicks. Claudia looked out the window of her small apartment above Sugar Project as she tied up her hair in a bun. The town had that Christmas village model look she'd always liked, back when she wasn't the one responsible for feeding the entire model. On the little table by the door, next to her keys and a couple of crumpled receipts, box number 3 stared at her boldly. It was midnight blue, with tiny golden stars painted along the edges. Perfect. Now the calendar doubles as decor. She crossed her arms for a second. She could go downstairs, open the bakery, and leave the box for later. Be an adult, prioritize, listen to that inner voice of responsibility. She opened the box, obviously. Inside, she found a mini chocolate sponge cake with a fine layer of powdered sugar that looked like miniature snow. Underneath the day's note, Day 3. You're not just the one who holds everything up. You also deserve to have someone hold your gaze. Claudia frowned, feeling that now familiar pinch in her chest. This anonymous gentleman is going to end up on a list of emotional suspects. Just saying. She popped half the cake into her mouth, put the box away with the others, and headed down to work, the echo of the phrase following her down the stairs. The morning was a parade of special orders. The town council had decided that weekend would be Hollyridge's first winter market in the main square, with craft stalls, live music, and, of course, a Central Sugar Project stand sponsoring everyone's Christmas cholesterol. We need at least 100 decorated cookies, 50 mini brownies, and a few dozen cinnamon rolls, Tom listed, notebook in hand and the look of someone doing very complicated mental math. And that's just for Saturday. Perfect, Claudia replied, tightening her apron strings. Do you remember when I thought opening a bakery in a small town would be quiet? No, Tom said, without looking up. I think that's one of your edited fantasies, Mildred, from her usual corner, lifted her coffee and a toast. Hollyridge isn't quiet in December, sweetheart. It's emotionally intense with sugar on top. Frida, from the counter, let out a meow that sounded suspiciously like approval. Claudia was setting out a new batch of star-shaped cookies when the door opened without the bell really being heard. Well, it did ring, but it was drowned out by a blast of cold air and laughter. I brought artistic reinforcements. Theo walked in with his cheeks rosy from the cold, the gray scarf badly wrapped, and a wool beanie with a ridiculous pom-pom. Beside him, a girl in her 20s, with the same shade of blue eyes and a wide smile, carried a cardboard box. Claudia, this is my sister Nora, Theo announced. Responsible for the horoscope app on my phone and half my childhood trauma. The other half is his fault, Nora replied, jerking her thumb toward Theo before turning to Claudia. Hi, this is where the legendary cinnamon rolls are made, right? Great, meeting the family on day 3, totally normal. No need to panic. Welcome to Sugar Project, Claudia smiled. I can confirm the cinnamon roll legend. The horoscope part is another story. Theo pulled a dramatic face. She's defaming me in front of my sister. You're incriminating yourself, Nora said, amused. I brought what you asked for. She set the box down on a table. Inside, Claudia saw glass jars with LED lights, little paper stars, and a bunch of blank tags. They wanted a wishing corner for the market, Theo explained. The idea was to put a small tree next to your stand, so people could hang written wishes on it. But I thought we could tie it in with your advent calendar. Translation, Nora cut in. My brother got excited and dragged me into the project. Theo ignored the comment. Look, each jar would have a light and a tag hanging from it. People write a wish for December, put it inside, and hang it on the tree. You put a sign next to it, something like your wish, your treat, and recommend something based on what they wrote. Claudia blinked. Recommend baked goods according to the level of life chaos people are in? Exactly, Theo said with a satisfied smile. Want love? Heart-shaped cookie. Want peace of mind? Brownie. Want money? Pecan pie. It's expensive, so you train yourself to spend. Nora burst out laughing. Told you she'd get it. Claudia felt a familiar spark of excitement. It had been a long time since she'd felt that tug in her stomach that wasn't anxiety but anticipation. The urge to do something pretty different, a little bit crazy. All right, dramatic Pisces, she said, laughing. I like it. Let's do it. Tom finally looked up from the espresso machine. I'm going to need a raise for handling this level of emotional metaphor, just saying. The afternoon slipped away in a sort of improvised choreography. Nora and Theo assembling glowing jars and testing impossible calligraphy on the tags. Tom rotating between the espresso machine and social media. If we don't put this on Instagram, it didn't happen. Mildred weighing in on the angle of every tiny light, as if she were directing a stage play. Claudia baked and organized, but she also caught herself laughing more than usual. Theo worked on the design for the Sweet Wishes corner sign, leaning on the bar, while Frida insisted on inspecting every marker as if it were potential sabotage material. Your cat is trying to eat my paintbrush, he reported. She's checking whether you're worthy, Claudia replied. She has a very strict evaluation system, based on Zodiac signs. Based on how much you feed her, and how often you compliment her fur, Claudia said. She's more practical than I am. As it started getting dark, Nora said goodbye with a promise to come back on Saturday to see the market set up. Tom left too, dragging Mildred home with the argument that even pastors need sleep. In the end, only the two of them and Frida remained, the bakery smelling of freshly baked dough and a faint trace of paint in the air. Claudia was standing in front of the oven, pulling out a tray of vanilla stars, when Theo came closer with his hands in his pockets. You know what the only bad thing is about taking this job decorating the town? He asked, leaning lightly on the kitchen doorway. That now everyone asks you for artsy favors, she guessed. That too. But no, he gave her a half smile. I'm starting to associate the smell of Christmas with this one specific place. And when I have to leave, my brain is still going to be looking for it. Claudia felt a little tug in her chest. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. Light conversation and zero emotional involvement. Great. They sell cookie-scented candles online, she tried to joke. You could place a bulk order. It's not the same and you know it, he said slowly. There was a brief silence, broken only by the soft crackle of the oven. Claudia set the tray down, then moved the cookies to a cooling rack. Her hands, trained by repetition, moved almost on their own. Her brain, however, was running in circles. Theo stepped a little closer.
He had a smudge of flour on his cheek, probably courtesy of Tom or the battle with the jars.
Claudia stared at him a bit too long. What is it? He asked with a crooked smile. Do I have Pisces written on my forehead? Worse, she said. You have flour on your face. And in this place, that's grounds for public humiliation if Mildred sees you. She moved in automatically, raising her hand toward his cheek. Theo didn't move. When her fingers brushed his skin, Claudia felt the contact like a small, warm spark. Relax. You're just wiping his face. This is not a rom-com scene. Not at all. She pulled her hand back quickly, maybe too quickly, but not before noticing that he was holding his breath too. Thanks, image supervisor, Theo murmured. His voice sounded a touch lower than usual. Frida, as if she couldn't stand that much tension, chose that exact moment to jump up onto the table and sniff one of the cookies up close. Don't you dare, Claudia warned, but the dramatic effect of the moment had already cracked a little. Theo leaned against the edge of the table, looking at the neatly lined up stars. Are these for the market or for internal consumption? Both, she answered. I have a mandatory random sample policy for quality control. That sounds like a very serious control system. It is. She grabbed a cookie and handed it to him. Taste. Theo took a bite, closed his eyes for a second, and let out an exasperated sigh. I'm going to report you, he said at last. This has to be illegal. Sorry. I don't offer refunds for sugar addiction. When he opened his eyes, he was looking straight at her. Up close, Claudia could make out the lighter ring around his iris, the little creases at the corners when he smiled. Can I ask you something? He said suddenly. As long as it's not what sign are your exes, go ahead. Worse, Theo swallowed. Do you always do this? She frowned. Do what? Turn people's lives into something that smells like home. Claudia felt her knees go a little weak. She forced herself to laugh. Only during business hours. Outside of that, I'm a certified disaster. You don't seem like it, he said, completely serious. Their eyes held for a few seconds. And there it was, the exact feeling any horoscope app would describe with sappy phrases like intense connection and crucial moment. Claudia felt her own body tipping the scales. Just one step closer. Just a little. This is a very bad idea. It also smells unbelievably good. Damn it. Theo, she began. I know, he said quietly. It's December, you're swamped with work. We've known each other for, what, 3 days. And I'm technically a walking temp job. She blinked. That's not exactly what I was going to say, but thanks for the recap. I was going to say, he added, taking that half step that left them almost touching, that if at any point you feel like I'm crossing a line, I want you to tell me so I can step back. Claudia felt a wave of tenderness so strong it almost hurt. Well then, Sagittarius. Here you go. The emotionally mature kind of man your app didn't dare promise you. I'll keep that in mind, she whispered. She didn't know who leaned in first. Maybe they both did, at the same time, as if the world's axis had decided to shift half a centimeter. Their lips met slowly, without initial fireworks, but with something much more dangerous, recognition. The first kiss was soft, almost a question. The second, a much clearer answer. Theo slid a hand to Claudia's waist, gently, as if he didn't want to scare her. She felt the heat of his body, the quickening beat in her stomach, the exquisite dizziness of letting herself feel. This is not professional. It's also exactly what you haven't allowed yourself in years. Frida protested with an indignant meow from the other side of the table, but for once nobody paid much attention. When they finally pulled apart, just a few centimeters, both of them were breathing a little faster. Theo rested his forehead against hers for a second. If you say this was kiss quality control, I'm going to be offended, he murmured. Claudia let out a nervous little laugh. No, I don't think this goes in the official inventory. There was a short silence, but not an uncomfortable one. Outside, snow had started to fall again, very fine, like someone gently shaking a jar of glitter. Inside, the oven was still radiating heat, and the kitchen smelled of vanilla, cinnamon, and freshly made decisions. She began, gesturing vaguely toward the trays. Yeah, he nodded. And I should let you work, but neither of them moved. In the end, it was Claudia who stepped back. Not because she didn't want to be where she was, but because something inside her, that part of her that had survived the divorce, the move, the comments about being too much, reminded her that opening up was one thing and losing herself was another. Theo, she said gently, I don't want this turning into one of those messes that end with someone leaving town at 3 a.m. He looked at her, serious, but without a hint of offense. I'm not going anywhere at 3 a.m, he replied. Mostly because it's way too cold at that hour. That pulled a smile from her, loosening the moment's tension. Let's take it slow, he suggested. I paint windows and set up wish trees. You work your magic with flour and sugar. And if every now and then He made a vague gesture between them. Get a little distracted. We'll see what the horoscope has to say about it. Claudia shook her head, but her eyes were shining. Sagittarius and Pisces ignoring astrological recommendations. Now that's living on the edge. I know, he grinned. We're wild. He leaned in just enough to brush her lips with a short kiss, more a semicolon than a full stop, and then stepped back for real, grabbing his coat from the chair. Tomorrow afternoon I'll finish the window and help you prep the boxes for the market, he said as he slipped it on. Sound good? Sounds good, she replied. They said goodbye at the door with another smile that said far more than their words dared. When the bell chimed to mark his exit, Claudia stood still in the middle of the kitchen for a moment, a spatula in her hand and her heart beating a brand new rhythm. You're not just the one who holds everything up. You also deserve to have someone hold your gaze. Well, mysterious calendar. I'll give you this one today, you nailed it. Frida jumped up onto the counter and sat, staring at her. Not a word, Claudia murmured, stroking her head. And don't give me that "I saw this coming" face. The cat closed her eyes with a satisfied air. Claudia went back to her cookies, but something in her had shifted. December was no longer just work, or just snow, or just ridiculous horoscopes. It was very dangerously the month she'd started letting someone hold her gaze. And maybe something more. The Saturday of the market dawned with a sky so white it looked like someone had gone overboard with the exposure filter. Claudia stood for a second in the middle of the hallway in her apartment, looking at the 3 little boxes lined up on the shelf. And the newly added one, number 4. It was a darker red than the first, with the golden number traced in a way she already recognized. Confident, curved, almost playful. Great, now I recognize a stranger's handwriting. Everything's fine. She seriously considered leaving it for the evening when everything had passed. When her head wasn't full of orders, boxes, people asking prices, and Theo with his gray scarf getting into everything. She opened the little box. Of course, inside was a gingerbread cookie smaller than the ones in the display, shaped like an imperfect heart with a thin line of white icing zigzagging across it. Underneath the note, Day 4. You can get your hopes up and still protect yourself. Saying "I don't know yet" is also a way of taking care of yourself. Claudia pressed her lips together. Great. The calendar has also completed a master's degree in emotional boundaries. She set the heart-shaped cookie on the plate, ate it in 2 bites because, drama aside, it was delicious, and tied her hair in a bun tighter than necessary. The horoscope app vibrated on the small table. A persistent notification. Sagittarius. Do not ignore the signs today. Enthusiasm is beautiful, but your feet also need ground. Perfect, Claudia muttered, grabbing her keys. Flour, sugar, and signs. This is getting full of metaphors. Frida followed her to the door with her tail held high. You stay here supervising the heating, she ordered. If it trips, meow in Morse code. The cat yawned, unimpressed, and returned to the sofa. Holly Regis Square looked like a living postcard. Wooden stalls with little white roofs. Warm lights strung from one side to the other, red ribbons, fir branches, and the inevitable smell of hot chocolate drifting from the church stand. Children running around in ridiculous earmuffs, couples taking selfies under a mistletoe arch, and an improvised choir singing Jingle Bells, out of tune with criminal enthusiasm. The Sugar Project stand occupied a privileged corner near the town hall's giant tree. Claudia had arrived early with Tom to set everything up, red checkered tablecloths, white boxes stacked with green boughs, trays of star, reindeer, and heart-shaped cookies, brownies, cinnamon rolls, and a simple handwritten sign, December tastes better here, just behind it. They had placed the small tree for the Sweet Wishes corner. It was still fairly bare, just a few tags hanging from the branches and glass jars with little lights waiting to be filled. Claudia rubbed her hands together, more from nerves than from cold. Breathe, Tom said, plugging the string of lights into the generator. You're literally the sugar queen of this town. It will go fine. You're saying that because we haven't had the avalanche of sticky children and opinionated parents yet, she replied. I'm also saying it because here comes your personal artist looking like he didn't sleep much. Claudia turned. Theo walked between the stalls carrying a large box in his arms, his gray scarf poorly wrapped, his hair even more tousled than usual, and his cheeks reddened from the cold. Nora walked beside him, carrying another box and gesturing as if narrating a football match. Artistic Reinforcements Part 2, Nora announced upon arriving. We bring signs, extra markers, and a thermos of coffee because my brother can't function without caffeine. Theo set the box down in a corner of the stand, straightened up and looked at her. Hi, he said. With that smile Claudia was already beginning to recognize as dangerous. Breathe. He's just a guy. A guy you've kissed in the kitchen. A guy who smells like paint and promise. But a guy. Hi, she replied. Ready to face the town in compulsive buyer mode? I face city neighborhood meetings. This can't be that bad. Mildred appeared from behind a pile of boxes like a Christmas spirit in a purple coat. Not bad, dear, she chimed in. Just intense. Like everything Claudia does. She winked at the baker and headed for the hot chocolate stand, leaving behind a cloud of floral perfume and sarcasm. The first hours were a controlled carousel. Neighbors greeting them. Children choosing cookies by icing color. Teenagers laughing at the wishes hanging on the tree. "Look at this one," Tom laughed, showing one to Claudia quietly. "For Mrs. Jenkins to stop singing carols at 6 in the morning. That one deserves a giant brownie," she replied. Pure bravery. Theo was in his element, restocking signs, drawing little stars on the wish tags, helping kids write their wishes, and whenever he could, brushing his hand against Claudia's as he passed a tray or a coffee cup. It wasn't anything exaggerated. A finger brushing hers, a shoulder lingering a second longer, a look meeting hers from across the stand. Enough for Claudia to feel a warmth under her chest that had nothing to do with the oven. By mid-morning, the Wishes corner was already full of tiny lights glowing inside the jars. Tara, the librarian, had written, "Find time to read an entire book without falling asleep." A high school kid had hung, "For my solo to go well in the concert," Mildred had put, "For the pastor to sing in tune or lose his voice. Either works." "That one gets a star cookie," Claudia decided, pointing at Mildred's tag. "Why a star?" Theo asked, amused. "Because some wishes only come true by miracle," she answered. He smiled, looking at her with that mix of humor and something deeper that always threw her a bit off balance. "And you?" he asked suddenly. "Are you going to write one?" Claudia looked away toward the line of customers. "I'm already busy enough making other people's wishes come true," she dodged. "My own go in another box. On a hallway shelf numbered 1 to 24, for example." The conflict arrived disguised as an innocent comment. There was a small pause. Tom had gone to get more paper cups. Nora was on the other side of the square, organizing a group of teenagers to hang festival posters. Claudia and Theo were left alone behind the stand for a moment, rearranging trays. A man in his late 50s approached the counter with his hands in his pockets. He was one of those neighbors who always seemed to have an opinion about everything. Mr. Harper, the hardware store owner. "Looks like the stand is doing well, Claudia," he said, glancing at the rows of sweets. "I'm glad. You know what I've always said, a hardworking woman keeps the town going." Claudia smiled carefully. "Thank you, Mr. Harper." He shifted his gaze toward Theo, who was wiping his hands on a cloth. "And you must be the lights boy, right?" he said with a half-smile. "You've done a good job. This looks like something out of a magazine." "Thank you," Theo replied politely. "I'm enjoying working here." Harper nodded, lowering his voice as if sharing some deep truth. He looked at Claudia. "Be careful, dear. There's already enough gossip in town without giving them more material." "You're smart. You'll know what you're doing." Claudia felt a small lash in her stomach. "Excuse me?" she asked, colder than she intended. Harper shrugged. "I mean, it's fine that he helps, of course, but you know how people are." A grown woman with such a young guy, so many hours together, little kisses behind the counter.
He made a vague gesture with his hand.
Stories start to spread. "And you've got a reputation to look after." Silence fell like wet snow. Theo slowly set the cloth down on the table. Claudia felt her face heat not with embarrassment, but with restrained anger. "Of course, took long enough." "The town morality committee. Harper," she said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "I appreciate your concern, but my reputation is not public property. It's mine, and I decide who I spend time with." "And where?" He cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "It was just a comment. No need to get like that." "I'll keep it in mind," Claudia cut him off. "Would you like anything?" "Brownies, cookies, a compass so you stop wandering into things that aren't your business." Tom arrived just in time to see Mr. Harper order 2 cinnamon rolls with wounded dignity and leave without looking at Theo. Theo turned to her. "I'm sorry," he began. "Why?" Claudia crossed her arms. "You didn't say anything. For being part of the circus." "I don't want to complicate your life here," Claudia inhaled, trying to let the comment slide off. But the echo of a grown woman clung to her skin. Her ex had used very similar phrases. "It's not a good look for a woman your age to be doing this. Think about what people will say. Don't make a fool of yourself. Breathe. This is not the same. He is not him." "Claudia." Theo was about to say something else when, From the other side of the wish tree, Nora appeared with her phone pressed to her ear. "Theo!" she called, waving her hand. "It's the agency again. You need to hear this." She shoved the phone almost into his face, not noticing that Claudia's expression had changed. Theo hesitated for a second, then stepped aside to listen. Nora, incapable of whispering in her life, spoke loudly enough for half the stand to hear. "Yes, he's the new muralist in the town I told you about," she said to whoever was on the other end. "Yes, Hollyridge. They've already seen some photos on social media. They love the style. They want to know if, when you're done here, you'd be willing to come to the city for the winter campaign." Claudia felt her stomach tighten. Of course. A Christmas project with an expiration date. Like discounted Torin tins. Theo ran a hand through his hair, nervous. "I can't talk much right now," he said into the phone. "I'm in the middle of the market, but... Yeah, I'll think about it and let you know tomorrow, okay?" He hung up and stood still for a moment with the phone in his hand. Nora was looking at him with shining eyes. "Theo, this is huge," she insisted. "You can't let it pass. You can't stay forever in a tiny town painting shop windows." Claudia felt each word falling on her like wet snow on thin clothing. Theo looked up at that moment and met her eyes. And he saw something he hadn't seen before, a new distance. Claudia. "Go," she said, turning her attention to a woman pointing at the tray of brownies. "You have important things to take care of." Her tone was polite, but the warmth was gone. The final blow came later, disguised as an innocent joke. It was nearly midday when the market reached its peak. The wish tree was full, the sugar project stand had a line, and Mildred had already threatened to organize a strike if the pastor didn't stop singing off-key. Nora returned to the stand with 2 coffees and positioned herself behind the counter as if she'd worked there forever. "I swear I've tried to convince him," she told Tom in a confidential tone. "Theo's a romantic, but he needs to think about his future. He can't base his decisions on." She cut herself off when she saw Claudia nearby, but it was too late. That word had already hung in the air like poorly spread icing. At that moment, Tom, blissfully unaware of the minefield, changed the subject. "By the way, Claudia, I have to say it," he said, smiling. "That secret calendar someone's leaving you is brilliant. The cookie heart today? Incredible. Whoever's doing it has talent? Secret calendar?" Nora asked, raising an eyebrow. Claudia felt the blood drain from her face. "It's nothing," she said. "Just a small detail." Tom, who seemed to have decided discretion was overrated, kept talking. "Theo told me about the little notes a few days ago," he added. "When he came to ask what time you opened exactly so he could sneak the boxes in without you noticing. Total Christmas elf vibes." The silence was different, heavier, sharper. Nora brought a hand to her mouth. "You did what?" she asked, looking at her brother and then at Claudia. "Oh no." Theo, who was returning to the stand with a box of cups, froze in the middle of the snowy aisle. Claudia placed her hands on the edge of the table to avoid strangling someone with a ribbon. "You..." she began, not taking her eyes off him. Tom finally seemed to realize he had both hands plunged up to the elbows in the metaphorical dough. I'll just take this to the car," he babbled, fleeing with a random box. Nora decided to vanish behind the wish tree at the same alarming speed. The square continued to echo with carols, laughter, and the crunch of snow, but for Claudia, the noise had turned into a distant murmur. "Can we talk for a second?" she said to Theo, with a calm that surprised even her. Without waiting for an answer, she walked around the stand and headed toward the side alley, where empty boxes were stacked and neither the choir nor the gossip could reach. Theo followed her. The alley smelled of damp cardboard, coffee, and a bit of smoke from the food stalls. The murmur of the market could be heard in the background, muffled by the brick walls. Claudia removed her gloves with precise movements. She tucked them into her coat pocket, then she turned around. "Since when?" she asked. Theo swallowed. "Since day 1, he admitted. "I saw the envelope on the register and..." "I'm not talking about the calendar," she cut him off with a gesture. "I figured that out already. I'm talking about since when you decided it was a good idea to slip into my life through the back door without saying anything." He blinked. "Claudia, I just wanted to give back some of the magic I give to others, I know," she replied. I've read your notes. They're beautiful. Very clever. Very accurate. So accurate it's scary. She crossed her arms, not because of the cold. Do you know what it's like for me to find a perfect little box every morning? She asked. With messages that speak exactly to my fears, my wounds, the way I hold everyone else up except myself. I thought maybe... She grimaced. I don't know what I thought. But I do know I was letting something very intimate touch me without even knowing who it came from. Theo took a step forward. That's why I hadn't told you, he said. I didn't want you to feel watched. I wanted it to be a gift, not pressure. Claudia let out a short, humorless laugh. And how does that align with asking Tom what time I open so you could sneak into my shop without me noticing? She shook her head. Do you know how many times in my life someone has made decisions for my own good? Let me tell you, too many. She leaned against the wall, searching for a moment of physical support. My ex decided to sell the house without consulting me, decided what part of the money was appropriate for me, decided my body had to fit into a size that looked good in his photos, decided my dreams were less important because they were smaller than his. She took a deep breath. I don't need another man making decisions on my behalf, even if they're sweet and covered in icing. Theo opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I'm not him, he said at last. I know, she replied, and that was the complicated part. She did know, but right now my body can't tell the difference. It just feels like someone crossed a boundary without warning. A heavy silence fell. And then there's the other thing, Claudia added, her voice a bit lower. The agency, the city, the offer. Theo rubbed the back of his neck. I was going to tell you, he said, today after the market. I didn't want to ruin your day. Claudia gave a sad smile. Too late. You've ruined it anyway, Weissover, actually. He took another step slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. Claudia, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, he confessed. I like Hollyridge. I like you. A lot. But I also need to work. Pay bills. I can't live off window paintings alone. I know, she said. I don't want you to miss opportunities. She looked him directly in the eyes. But I'm also not going to hang my heart on a nail in a place where you're temporary. Not again. I'm not going to fall for someone who already has one foot out the door while telling me he's thinking about it. Theo closed his eyes for a second, as if her words caused physical pain. It's not that simple, he tried. Of course it isn't, she agreed. Important things never are. She straightened up. Look, I don't want to cause a scene in the middle of the plaza, she added. Let's finish the day. The market, the wish tree, the photos, whatever's left. We'll be professional, after that. She had to swallow before continuing. After that I need space. To think about what I want. Without horoscopes, without anonymous notes, without agency offers in the middle of it. Theo nodded slowly, his eyes shining with something that wasn't just cold. If that's your boundary, I respect it, he said, his voice rough. He stopped. The corner of his mouth trembled a bit. I just hope you don't close the door completely before I get a chance to prove to you that you're not in my life as some seasonal project. Claudia felt a sharp pull in her chest. The part of her that had melted under his kisses and his drawings wanted to believe him blindly. The other part, the one that knew about midnight moves and unfair signatures, stood firm. Remember box number 4. You can get excited and still protect yourself? Those aren't opposing ideas. For now, she said firmly, the door stays slightly open. But I'm staying on this side. And you decide which side you want to be on. Theo nodded once more. He didn't argue. He didn't blame her.
He didn't chase her. All right, he whispered.
Let's finish the market. They walked back to the stand side by side, but with a centimeter more distance between them than before. Scene 5, wishes, misunderstandings, and snow in the stomach. Final part translation. The afternoon slipped by on autopilot. Claudia smiled, served sweets, recommended cookies based on wishes, and made jokes that people appreciated without noticing that her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes. Tom sensed something, but didn't ask. Nora helped in silence, acutely aware that she had accidentally poured gasoline on a very delicate fire. Theo was still there, efficient, kind to everyone, but his hands carefully avoided brushing against Claudia's. When they finally closed the stand, the plaza had begun to empty. The giant tree was still lit, its lights reflected on the trampled snow. The wish corner looked beautiful, dozens of jars glowing softly as they hung from the branches, each containing a handwritten wish. "Do you want to read any?" Tom asked while gathering boxes. Claudia shook her head. "Not today. I already have enough wishes on my mind." She helped load the last boxes into the car, said goodbye to the team with a mechanical smile, and walked back alone to Sugar Project. The bakery, empty now, smelled of sugar, cinnamon, and a faint trace of smoke from the street. She climbed the stairs with heavy legs. Frida was waiting on the sofa, curled up as if she'd been there for hours. "It's been a very long day," Claudia murmured, dropping beside her. The cat sat up and rested her head on Claudia's thigh, purring as if trying to mend something broken. Claudia reached toward the shelf. Box number 4 was still there, now empty, with its folded note resting beside it. She picked it up and read it again. "You can get excited and still protect yourself?" Saying, "I'm not sure yet," is also a way of taking care of yourself. She let out a short laugh. "Well, mysterious calendar," she said, leaning her head back against the sofa. "Today I'm going to take your advice." Frida snuggled a little closer. Outside, the snow kept falling slowly, as if the sky itself were trying to decide what it wanted. Claudia closed her eyes. She didn't know what would happen with Theo, with the agency, with the calendar, with all that beautiful, painful mess that had exploded in just 4 days. The only thing she did know was this. This time, if she chose to stay in something, it would also be for herself. Not despite herself. And that, even if it hurt, was also a kind of hope. The days following the market had a strange flavor. Like when you try a new recipe and don't decide until the third bite whether you like it or not. Claudia kept baking, assisting customers, smiling, and serving coffee as always. Sugar Project was busier than ever. Orders, advent calendar reservations. People who came just to see the window painted by Theo and the sign that read, "December tastes better here." On the outside, everything was the same. On the inside, not so much. Theo kept his word. He gave her space. He still stopped by the bakery, yes. He worked on the town lights, fixed market details, touched up the drawing on the glass. But there were no more casual finger brushes, no shoulders seeking each other, no half-whispered jokes only they understood. They talked about work, logistics, schedules. Never about the agency, never about the calendar. The little boxes, however, kept coming. Number 5 was gold, with a white number 5 on the lid. It came with a hazelnut truffle and a short message. "Day 5, you don't have to forgive quickly. You can go at your own pace." Number 6, light blue, with a salted star-shaped cookie. "Sad, Day 6, taking care of yourself isn't the same as shutting yourself away." Claudia read them sitting on the sofa, with Frida curled on her lap, feeling a mix of tenderness and annoyance at herself. Great, now my emotional dilemmas come in tasting-size portions. She couldn't deny that those notes already knew her far too well. And now that she knew who wrote them, they hurt a bit more and soothed a bit more at the same time. Like a wound cleaned with disinfectant. "We're not doing anything impulsive," she told Frida one night, while the cat insisted on pushing box number 6 with her paw. "For the first time ever, we're going to think before throwing ourselves into the pool," Frida meowed, not looking convinced. The town council announced that on December 10th, there would be a small event in the square. They would officially turn on the town lights. The choir would sing something less criminal than "Jingle Bells," and a symbolic reading of some wishes from the market tree would take place. "Perfect," Mildred said from her corner in Sugar Project. "Another event for people to pretend they don't know who wrote each wish. Weren't you going to boycott the pastor?" Claudia asked, handing her a coffee. "I can boycott him and attend." "Multitasking is real, darling." Claudia laughed, but deep down she had a knot in her stomach. The idea of being in the square with the whole town, with Theo, with the tree full of wishes, and her own heart wobbling like on a tightrope felt high risk. On the morning of the 10th, box number 10 was waiting on the shelf. It was white, simple, with a silver 10, inside a small glazed lemon cake. And a note that made her freeze in the middle of the hallway. "Day 10, no advice today. Just one question. If no one had an opinion, what would you want?" Claudia closed her eyes. "How exhausting people are when they ask exactly what I don't want to answer," She ate the cake, tied her hair up, bundled herself in warm clothes, and went downstairs to open the bakery. Evening fell early, as it always does in December. The square slowly filled with hats, scarves, and clouds of white breath. The giant tree looked even more impressive with the lights off, waiting for the big moment. The Sweet Wishes corner had been moved exactly as it was. The small tree, full of glowing jars, stood beside the stage where the mayor and the pastor were getting ready for their act. Claudia stood at the back of the crowd, next to Tom and Nora. They had closed Sugar Project a little earlier so they could all attend. Mildred, of course, was in the front row, wearing her purple coat and watching everything like a performance inspector. "Ready for the show?" Tom whispered. "As long as no one makes me sing, yes," Claudia replied. The mayor gave a short speech about community, Christmas spirit, and the usual words that sounded nice through a microphone echo. Then it was the pastor's turn, who promised to be brief and surprisingly was. "And now," announced the mayor, "a little surprise. Our guest artist this year, Theo Mitchell, has not only decorated our streets but has also been working on something special for tonight." Claudia felt her pulse quicken. Theo stepped onto the stage in his dark coat, gray scarf, and his hands shoved in his pockets. He looked slightly uncomfortable with so much attention, but his eyes were searching for something in the crowd. "They found her," breathe. "This isn't a movie. It's your town square and you're wearing thermal socks, not heels." "Hi," he said into the microphone, his voice sounding slightly deeper than usual. "I promise I'm not going to sing." The crowd laughed. Mildred clapped loudly. "I just wanted to thank Coleridge for adopting me this December," he continued. "I came here thinking I'd hang some lights, paint a couple of windows, and leave as soon as the contract ended." Claudia felt a sting in her chest. "But," Theo smiled, looking around. "Turns out this town is a little more persistent than I expected." He pointed to the small wish tree. "These days I've read many of them," he said. "I didn't open the jars, I promise, but I've seen the tags. And there's something that repeats itself. People want small things that are actually huge. Peace, time, feeling at home, not being so alone. Not losing the good things they already have." His gaze returned to Claudia for a second. So brief no one else seemed to notice. "She did. So I decided to do something similar," he added. "Write my own wish, but instead of hanging it here." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded white card. "I'm going to read it out loud." The murmuring in the square lowered. Even Mildred went still. Theo unfolded the card. "It says," he read, "I want to build something that feels like home, even if it's scary. Even if it's in a place I never thought I'd stay." Claudia swallowed. "And underneath," he continued, with a crooked smile, "I wrote, and I want to do it without disappearing along the way. And without asking anyone else to disappear from me." A small ripple of approval moved through the square. Someone applauded. Mr. Harper cleared his throat awkwardly somewhere nearby. "That's why." Theo took a breath. "I called the agency this morning." Now the entire square was silent. "I told them I'd accept working with them, but not moving to their city," he explained. "If they want my murals, they'll have to accept that my base is here. That my winters smell like cinnamon and snow, not metro and smoke. That I'm not leaving a place where I finally feel at home just for a bigger project in a place where I have no one." Claudia felt something inside her expand like a window opening in a closed room. "So yes," Theo finished. "I'll keep working with them if they accept. I'll travel when needed. I'll come back. I'll hang lights until Harper complains about the electric bill. And if this town keeps putting up with me, I'll stay." There were real applause, not polite ones. Tom whistled. Nora discreetly wiped away a tear. Mildred applauded like she was watching the finale of a talent show. Claudia clapped too. Not because it was for her, precisely because it wasn't. He's choosing himself. And he's choosing to stay. Good combination. Theo waited for the noise to settle, then added with a shy smile. "And now, if you don't mind, I'd like to turn on the lights with someone who knows a few things about building home." The mayor nodded happily. Of course, go ahead. "Who would you like to invite?" Theo didn't hesitate. "Claudia Lopez," he said, turning toward her. "Owner of Sugar Project and responsible for all of us being half addicted to her cinnamon rolls." The entire square turned to look at her, Fantastic. Just what she needed. Theatrical spotlight and zero rehearsal. Tom gently nudged her. Go, he whispered. It's just a switch. Not an altar. Claudia walked toward the stage, hearing the snow crunch under her boots and her heart pounding in sync with the choir. She climbed up. Theo offered his hand to help her. Their fingers brushed. No melodramatic lightning, but the familiar warmth of someone who had once held her waist in a kitchen. Hi, he murmured, just for her. Hi, she answered, just as quietly. The mayor pointed to a large wooden lever decorated with ribbons and tinsel. It was ridiculous and perfect. On 3, he announced through the microphone. 1, 2, 3! Claudia and Theo pushed together. The lights on the giant tree turned on at the same time as the streetlights. The arches over the main street, the market, and the little wish tree, the square let out a collective ooh. The glowing jars shone like tiny constellations. For a few seconds they just looked. At the town, the snow, the lights. You did something very brave today, Claudia said, still facing the square. For reading a card out loud? He joked. For choosing a place and choosing yourself, she corrected. Without turning anyone into an excuse, Theo was silent for a moment. I'm trying to learn, he admitted. To do things openly, not sneaking in through back doors. Not deciding for others what they need. She knew he was talking about the calendar. About that, she said, turning slightly toward him. If you want me to stop, I'll stop, Theo cut in quickly, very quietly. The boxes, the notes, everything. I never meant to cross a line. I just thought it might help you to have someone think of you the way you think of everyone else. Claudia took a deep breath. The problem isn't someone thinking of me, she said. It's not knowing who that someone was. She met his eyes. But now I know. Theo swallowed. And knowing that, he whispered, do you want me to continue? Claudia thought of the notes. Number 1, about receiving magic. Number 2, about letting herself be cared for. Number 3, about having her gaze held. Number 4, about protecting herself. Number 10, about asking what she really wanted. She thought of her ex, of Harper, of all the voices that had told her what she should do, should weigh, should feel. And then she thought of Theo calling the agency to say, I want this, but this way, without blaming her, without using her as an excuse, without putting the weight of his decision on her shoulders. Okay, Sagittarius, here comes your answer. I want you to continue, she said at last. But with one condition. Theo raised an eyebrow. Anything you want. That from now on, if you're going to step into anything that touches my heart, you do it through the front door, she said. No masks, no anonymity. With my consent. A small smile appeared on her lips. And yes, that includes cookies. Theo let out a shaky laugh of relief. Deal, he whispered. Very little epic for the amount of feeling happening right now. We're in a small town, she replied. The epic comes from the lights. The low music started playing. Christmas songs, but the tolerable kind. Claudia, he said, lowering his tone even more. Before we go down there and Mildred organizes an unauthorized press conference, I need to ask you something. Go ahead, if nobody had an opinion, he quoted, glancing up as if reading note number 10 in the sky. If there were no Harper, no gossip, no exes, no agencies, if it were just you, here, now, what would you want? Claudia felt her chest contract and expand at the same time. For the first time, she answered without her first reaction being to protect herself. I would want, she said slowly, to keep seeing what happens with you when December ends. She said it just like that. No embellishment. No, maybe. Or I'm not promising anything in front. Theo looked at her as if an extra light had turned on just for him. Does that mean, he began. It means I'm not going to wait for you as if my life were on pause, she clarified. My bakery, my cat, my sore back at 6 a.m. All that stays. But if you truly stay here, if you really want to build something that feels like home, I'd like to be included in the blueprints. Theo smiled slowly. That smile that had disarmed her since day one, but now with something new, respect. I can work with that, he said. I promise to send the project for your approval every time. And without signing it as anonymous, she added. Signed as Theo Mitchell, dramatic Pisces, he conceded. Sagittarius approves, she replied. There were no applause or choir at that exact moment, just the background music and the murmur of the town. And yet for her, the clearest sound was something inside clicking into place. Theo leaned in. The kiss wasn't stolen or improvised. It was an answer to a question they had both asked out loud. Warm, steady, with his hand on Claudia's back and the other still holding the light-adorned leva. She held him by the coat lapel, feeling the wool under her fingers and the calm but intense thump of her own heart. This isn't losing yourself, Claudia. This is choosing. There's a big difference. When they pulled apart, Theo rested his forehead against hers for a second. Just so you know, he murmured, I'm still going to keep leaving little boxes. But now I'll ring the bell, walk through the door, order coffee, and tell you that one of them is for you. No more nighttime infiltration. Acceptable plan, she said. And I demand written right of reply. You're going to leave me notes too, he asked, eyes bright. Don't rule out ending up with an advent calendar of emotional reality, she warned softly. They stepped down from the stage amid gentle applause and neighborly jokes. Mildred swooped in first. That was beautiful, she declared, and far too unscandalous for my taste. But I suppose we can work on that. Step 1. Harper gets used to a grown woman being with whoever she damn well wants, Claudia said. Step 2. That boy remembers to bring me a free coffee tomorrow for all that clapping, Mildred added, giving Theo a pat on the arm. Tom and Nora came over too. Tom winked at Claudia. Does this mean I no longer have to pretend I know nothing about the boxes? He whispered. It means that if you leak information again without warning, you'll be handing out flyers dressed as a reindeer, she replied, but this time her smile reached her eyes. Nora hugged her brother and then Claudia without asking permission but with genuine affection. Sorry about the agencies and the misplaced comments, she murmured in Claudia's ear. Sometimes I get carried away with your talent and forget you're not just a portfolio. And I forget I'm not just a bakery, Claudia answered. They pulled apart laughing. The square kept celebrating, kids running, snow falling, tolerable Christmas songs. And Claudia, in the middle of it all, allowed herself for once to feel that she wasn't defending against everything, she was moving toward something. No eternal promises, no framed forever. Just a guy who had chosen to stay and a woman who had chosen not to lock herself away. And for December, that wasn't bad at all. The night of the light ceremony didn't end in the square. When the mayor declared the event over, the choir started another carol and people drifted away in small groups toward their homes. Claudia and Theo stayed there, a little off to the side, still with the echo of the applause and the kiss on the stage buzzing under their skin. I'll walk you home, he said, shoving his hands into the pockets of his coat. Or at least to the door of Sugar Project. Full Christmas artist service. I live above the oven, she replied. You don't have to go very far out of your way. Perfect brain. Thanks for the most suggestive line possible in this moment. They walked along the main street, now bathed in the warm light of the garlands. The snow crunched under their boots, the cold painted their cheeks red, and for the first time in a long time, Claudia didn't feel in a hurry to get anywhere. She just wanted to keep stretching that bit of sidewalk out with him beside her. Are you okay? Theo asked, after a few meters of comfortable silence. It's been a lot of intensity for a single day. Claudia searched for the word. Full, tired, but okay. And pissed off at Harper, but that's a permanent state, he laughed. Harper is going to need training for this new world order. He can get in line, she said. They reached the bakery door. The shop window Theo had painted reflected the town lights. December tastes better here, glowed above the painted mugs and the minimalist version of Frida in a Santa hat. Claudia put the key in the lock and hesitated for a second. Do you want to come up? She asked, turning to him. I can offer you a random December night dinner made of bakery leftovers and tea. Theo didn't answer right away. He just looked at her as if he needed to make sure of something. Only if you're sure, he said at last in a low voice. I don't want you to feel like you owe me some gesture because of the speech, the agency, the everything. Claudia took a deep breath. This is choosing, not compensating. Not filling gaps. I don't owe you anything, she said. And you don't owe me anything either. If you come up, it's because you want to. And if you don't, that's fine too. Theo nodded slowly. I want to, he said. They went up the stairs in silence, their boots leaving little trails of melted snow on the steps. Claudia turned on the hallway light. The flat smelled like vanilla oven and a hint of brand new nerves. Welcome to my kingdom, she said, trying to lighten the mood. Organized chaos, cat included. Frida, who had apparently decided she was on emotional security duty that night, was waiting for them, sitting in the middle of the living room with her tail wrapped around her body. Good evening, Frida, Theo greeted her. I come with good intentions and zero anonymity. The cat blinked slowly and walked off to the armchair as if granting permission. Claudia dropped her coat on a chair, took out her hair tie and felt her hair fall over her shoulders. Theo watched her, unhurried, as if he were getting used to this version of her without apron or counterlights. So this is your hideout, he murmured. I imagined it smelling of cinnamon, but I underestimated it. It's the full package, she said. Cinnamon, sugar, and a noisy radiator. They stood facing each other, barely a step apart. There was no background music, no carols, no choir. Just the quiet ticking of the kitchen clock and Frida's low purr. Claudia, Theo said, lowering his voice a little, if you tell me now you'd rather I left, I'll understand. I don't want to become yet another decision you have to undo. She felt that pull in her chest. The old fear poked its head out, small but persistent, reminding her of all the times she'd betrayed herself to fit into someone else's life. But this time, right beside it, there was something new, the memory of her own voice saying, the door stays ajar, and I decide from which side. I don't want you to leave, she said calmly. I want you to stay, tonight, here. The relief that flashed across Theo's face was so obvious it almost made her laugh. Instead, she took that half step that was missing and closed the distance. The kiss was anything but timid. There was gratitude, yes, and want. A lot of want. Theo took hold of her waist, pulling her closer with a care that didn't lessen the intensity. Claudia rested her hands on his chest, feeling the warmth of his body under the jumper, the steady way he held her. His mouth tasted of mulled wine and something that dangerously reminded Claudia of home. Her back bumped gently against the hallway wall, between a crooked picture and a coat rack. They both laughed, breaking the kiss, then found each other again, this time more slowly, as if they were memorizing rhythms. Theo's hands traced the curve of her waist, the line of her back, pausing at every point as if he wanted to leave proof that he was there, that he was feeling all of her. Claudia slid her fingers to his nape, tangling them in his hair, and felt a delicious shiver run through her when he let out a breath against her mouth. This isn't disappearing, Claudia. This is taking up your space. All of it. There was no rush. They moved from the hallway to the bedroom between quiet laughter, tripping over a stray slipper, with Theo murmuring sorry against her neck every time he pulled her a little closer. Layers of clothing gave way slowly, the jumper, the scarf, the shirt, the tights. There were no gestures of hiding, no panicked rush to turn off the light. There were looks. There was an "you're gorgeous," said with the full conviction of someone who means it. There was an "you have no idea how much I needed this," that didn't sound empty, but like someone finding himself again in another person's skin. When they finally fell onto the bed, the world shrank to tangled sheets, warm skin, breaths tangling and hands exploring with a new kind of patience. No one needed anyone to walk them through it step by step. They just let themselves be carried by the mix of desire, tenderness, and that deep relief of feeling wanted and respected at the same time. The night stretched out in slow caresses, kisses that started soft and ended burning. Muffled laughter when Frida decided the pillow in the corner was a better vantage point for what was happening than the window. There was a moment when Claudia felt her whole body shudder with pleasure, and, for the first time in a long time, she didn't apologize in her head for the space she took up, for the sounds leaving her throat, for the intensity with which she was living that moment. She fell asleep later than usual, her head resting on Theo's chest, listening to his breathing gradually return to calm. Okay, horoscope. Now this is a new emotional cycle, not your cheesy metaphors. The next morning dawned with a gentle calm. Snow covered Hollyridge like a clean, silent blanket, and the flat above Sugar Project smelled of intense night, coffee and something like peace. Claudia opened her eyes slowly. It took her a second to remember why her pillow felt different. It wasn't a pillow. It was Theo's arm, pleasantly heavy around her waist. She blinked, getting used to the clear light coming through the window. Frida was curled up at the corner of the bed, close enough to supervise, far enough away to pretend she didn't care. Theo shifted a little behind her. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," Claudia replied, not moving. "Fair warning, my just-woke-up face doesn't come with a Christmas filter." He laughed quietly, his chest vibrating against her back. "Your just-woke-up face comes with horoscope fulfilled." "That's good enough for me." A small, comfortable silence followed. Claudia turned around to look at him. His hair was tousled, his stubble a bit darker, and he had that "I can't quite believe this, but I'm not complaining" expression that she found surprisingly adorable. "Are you okay?" she asked. Theo searched for the word.
Happy. A bit scared, but happy. Claudia nodded.
"Welcome to the club." They stayed in bed a few minutes more, unhurried, sharing the kind of silence that would once have scared her and now felt like a small luxury. In the end, reality showed up in the form of a baker's internal alarm clock. "I have to go down and turn the oven on," Claudia said, pulling a face. "December doesn't bake itself." "I'll come with you," he said without hesitation. "I can make coffee. It's the least I can do after." He gave her a crooked smile. "Everything from last night. That. Exactly like that. Without guilt. Without downplaying it or turning it into a drama." They got dressed amid soft jokes, stealing kisses whenever they crossed paths in the hallway. Claudia caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror. Slightly messy hair, faint marks on her skin, eyes shining in a way that had nothing to do with highlighter. "Hi, new version of me," she thought. "Nice to meet you." They went down to the bakery. Sugar Project was quiet, still dark, but the permanent smell of sugar and coffee clung to the walls. Claudia switched on the main lights. The painted shop window threw back the glow from the street. Theo went straight to the coffee machine like he'd been working there for years. "Can I treat you to your own coffee this morning?"
He asked, getting 2 cups ready. "Go ahead," she smiled.
"The machine is all yours." While he handled the coffee, Claudia headed, out of sheer habit, to the little shelf in the back hallway. The spot where the mysterious little boxes usually showed up was empty. She felt a strange mix of disappointment and relief. Then she heard Theo behind her. "I think something's missing in this area today," he said. When she turned around, she saw him holding 2 mugs of coffee in one hand and a small white box in the other. It had an 11 drawn in blue and a simple ribbon. "Front door delivery," he announced. "No infiltrations." Signed and with coffee. Claudia let out a soft laugh that untied the last knot in her stomach. Much better protocol. She took the box and opened it right there. Inside was a snowflake-shaped cookie and a very simple note. "Day 11. Today I just wanted to wish you a good day. And remind you that I'm here, at the front door." Claudia felt something settle inside her. "I like this new calendar format," she said, folding the note carefully. "More coffee, less overwhelming mystery." "I'm working on the upgraded version," he replied. "It comes with consent clauses and right to reply." "Perfect," she smiled. "Because I plan to leave you notes too. I'm not going to let you have the emotional drama monopoly. Deal." They leaned against the counter, side by side, watching the bakery slowly fill with morning light. "I've been thinking," Theo said after a sip of coffee, "that maybe we could start a small tradition. Not a secret calendar, but I don't know, starting mornings together whenever we can. Even if it's just 10 minutes before this place fills up with customers." Claudia looked at him sideways. "And that won't get in the way of your dramatic free artist status?" "I'll make it part of my legend," he joked. "The muralist who starts his day with cinnamon rolls and conversations with the most interesting woman in town." "Wow. Now I really am going to have to charge admission." She laughed. They fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind you build when there's nothing left to hide. Outside, the town was starting to wake up. And inside, the bakery smelled like something more than freshly baked dough. It smelled like a shared home. Frida, who had come down with the air of a feline queen, jumped up onto a chair and watched the scene with a slow, satisfied blink, as if approving the new arrangement. "Look, you've got the supervisor's approval," Claudia said, nodding toward the cat. Then everything's done, Theo said, pretending to sigh in relief. Now we just have to deal with the humans. Claudia took his hand for a second, just to feel the solid, real contact. We're going to do this at our own pace, she said. No rush, no pressure. And with lots of coffee in between. Deal, he replied, gently lacing his fingers with hers. The day unfolded with the calm of something that has fallen into place. Customers came in, the cookies sold, and life went on in Hollyridge. But deep down, Claudia knew something really had changed. It was no longer just December. No longer just an anonymous calendar or a seasonal romance. It was the beginning of something built on conscious choices, clear boundaries, and a front door that would stay open. And as the first round of customers ordered their breakfasts, Claudia thought that, after all, this had been the best gift of that December. A new beginning that smelled of sugar, coffee, and a future that, for the first time in a long time, didn't scare her to imagine. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe and go watch another video.